Hey, welcome back to another Epidose. These crazy guys that just eat meat and can't stop talking about it. Today, Justin and I doing a little short ribs here. We try and put out one short ribs a week and then one long format a week. We're always talking about green things jumping up behind us when we don't expect it, and all the things related to a meat-based diet, so that how it impacts people's health, the success stories people have had, the sort of recoveries they've had from different ailments and stuff like that. So if that's the sort of thing you're interested in, make sure you subscribe, and leave us your comments. What's today's topic there, Justin?
Persistence honey, I believe, which is the idea that, which is a true idea, but me and Tom just thinks it just needs some editing, basically. And that is that the idea that the reason why humans are the top of the food chain, the super carnivore, what have you, is because of our ability of endurance to outrun other animals. So basically, the idea is that we would throw a spear, hit an animal, a gazelle, what have you. It's injured, it's bleeding out, and it's going to run away, right? Because it's hurt, and then it's not just going to kick it. And so it runs away, and that we're able to follow the animal, and the animal eventually collapses from exhaustion, typically heat exhaustion, and we're able to, then just grab it up and cut it up or take it back to the tribe or whatever we're going to do with it.
Eat in place.
Eat it in place. Yeah, there you go. Drive through gazelle. And that's how we hunted. And so it's thought that long distance running, we're built for this oldest movement, this static movement. And Tom has done some separate research, and he thinks that's not exactly accurate. So Tom, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, so I think we just kind of got to shed some light on the nuances of hunting, and this really comes back from the discussion of how do we evolve, or why did we evolve the way we did, and what sets us apart from pre-humans that we evolved from. So a lot of times people use this discussion about persistent hunting as a way to justify certain types of exercise. And of course, a lot of people are interested in exercise because they want to be healthier, right? So I like to point out that, even the great ultra marathon runners and marathon runners will tell you, don't do this if you want to be healthy, because it's not necessarily the way to live a long time. And of course, we know, like, marathon runners tend not to live longer than us, and people who run a lot tend to develop heart problems, right? So among other things.
And their poor knees. I mean, people wear out their
Sure.
knees doing a lot of running too.
Yeah, and some people would say, oh, that comes down to the wrong technique or whatever. But in general, I think that we evolved more recently primarily to be sprinters more so than long distance runners. And we do tend to, persistent hunting in itself may not even require you to run continuously. But back in the day, say, before 12 to 14,000 years ago, we probably primarily hunted megafauna. So megafauna is going to be the animals like mammoths, mastodons, three-toed sloths, woolly mammoths, stuff like that. These animals typically do not run away from people. The ones that are still around, anybody seen a full-grown elephant? He's is the full-grown elephant's idea is that, well, I just step on you and squish you if I don't like you, because that's what they do, right? So I mean, even a full-grown elephant, a full-grown tiger can't take down a full-grown elephant. They're just so powerful, right? They're just such a formidable animal. So in a
And
pack of them,
honorable mention to the hippo that actually kills more people in Africa than any other
right?
than any other animal
Yeah.
in the animal kingdom. Actually, kills more people is the hippo,
Yeah,
and that's
well,
because they charge out of the water and they're moving so fast.
there you go. A hippo, another example. Hippos are mean, and they will eat you. So, just like crocodiles, I think saltwater crocodiles in particular actually hunt human beings deliberately, but many a crocodile or alligator will kill humans, so it's not, these animals aren't afraid of us typically, so that's an advantage. You don't have to run after and chase them. And before the climate change, before the end of uh the last ice age, these megafauna were plentiful all over and we clearly left a trail of, of following them around and eating them all over the place. We followed them into northern Europe as the ice age was setting in, before there's any evidence that we were using fire, that we had any control of fire. And then all over, even in the Americas here, people don't typically think of mammoths walking around in North America or even Central America, but they find mammoth traps, which were pits that they tricked the mammoths into falling into so that they could eat them. And then they find habituation sites where people were eating mammoth, and including building their homes out of mammoth bones. They essentially use mammoth bones as timber, right? And when I say mammoth, but that, this is going to include other forms of megafauna that were around. So these animals were plentiful. They were, once we learned how to hunt, we learned to use a spear. Even the pygmies, I think, in Africa were famous for just walking up behind the elephant and cutting the Achilles tendon, so the elephant was immobilized and it was game over. They could take their time taking the elephant apart and eating it. So anyways, I think our concept of how we evolved to hunt has less to do with, like marathon type running, and more like sprinting and stuff like that. Because you may want to, sneak up on a herd of megafauna, or after they're extinct, we had to eat smaller animals. So we're going to be eating, things like an aurochs, which is like a cow. It's a type of cattle, deer, gazelle, sheep, goat, you know, bears, you know, lions, tigers, oh my, we're eating stuff like that, faster, leaner animals. And that's really where we see a technological development. People start getting more sophisticated with the spear. You see things like the addle appear, which is like a spear throwing device, and then eventually bow and arrow, archery. The technology that went into the spear points got better and better. And so anyways, we know from the nitrogen isotope testing for the last 30,000-40,000 years, we know what we ate, and this is what we ate. So when you look at the animals we ate, it gives you some idea how we hunt them, right? And when you find all the tools, and then the basically trash pits from habituation sites or places that were frequently populated by human beings, and they leave their trash behind, we find bone fragments, spearheads, tools for breaking down the animal, cutting the meat, processing the hide. And that includes, fish, shellfish, stuff like that. We see the evolution of fish hooks and spears for hunting in aquatic environments. And so I think when we look at how human beings evolved, we've talked before about how the sclera, the whites of our eyes are white, most other animals are not. That was a communicative thing that probably lent itself primarily to hunting. The fact that we have very little body hair makes us better in the water. Probably helps keep us cool, because human beings are really good at adapting to climates. And of course, we spent, through our evolution, there's been some of us that lived in warmer climates and many of them that lived in colder climates. But of course, if you're hunting megafauna, you could make clothes, right? So, as much as when I was a kid, I remember people from PETA throwing paint on people walking down the street because they're wearing furs or leather or whatever. Our first clothes were probably made out of animal hides, right? So anyways, we adapted the environment, we adapted to the animals that we were hunting. We came up with technology, but we also evolved. We've got a shoulder for throwing, and if you're gonna throw a spear at an animal, you're probably sneaking up on it, right? You're probably not running up on it and then throwing. You're probably sneaking up on it and you're throwing, and you want to mortally wound that animal. One, you don't want it to suffer, because even if you're not compassionate to the animal, you don't want it scaring the other food away. And two, you want to mobilize as quickly as possible, because you don't want to run off and not be able to find it. Because in a lot of cases, it really wouldn't have to run that far, and it'd be really hard to find, right? So you may be
Or something else would come up and grab it. I'm
absolutely,
sure.
a tiger or something's going to come, a mountain lion's going to come along and claim it. A bear. I mean, what the hell do you do when bears walk up and claim it? That's a serious fight, right? I mean, those are the bears and, lions and, stuff like that. They're the real monsters of the world. They're the real monsters that are embedded in our psyche. Of course, it includes little things like spiders too, maybe snakes, but
Well, and giant birds. I always got to give the special
giant birds.
to big birds.
Yeah.
That
Nice. Good,
you know
nice adjustment there. Good job.
that that most likely would carry potentially would carry our young. They could just
Sure.
come and scoop up a young human, a young aquatic ape, out of the sky.
There goes Chaka. I kind of tend to think that we see some of this. The people are always arguing about what's the best way to exercise, but to me, I think that our hunting practices required us to sneak up on animals, sprint after them after we wound them, typically, or the manual labor dismantling a mammoth, right? I mean, that's not a small job. That's a lot of ribs. So anyways, I think being able to walk long distances and carry loads and stuff like that probably has more to do with the type of exercise that's best for people based on evolution, as opposed to doing a lot of running, a lot of cardio. I mean, if you do a lot of cardio, your body's going to get efficient at doing cardio. If you're going to do a lot of weightlifting, your body's going to get more efficient at weightlifting, right? And that's just how it goes. But I think for overall health, I think something like a combination of walking, sprinting, and a lot of weightlifting is really what we're looking at. So anyways, that's my take on the persistent hunting. Really, I mean, if you really want to know what kind of hunting people did, you got to talk about what period of time. And I tend to look at it in a long period of time. We know that 3.7 million years ago, maybe 4 million years ago, we have tool marks on fossil bones where pre-humans were clearly using sharpened stones or hand axes to cut the flesh off the bone to eat it, and cutting open bones and eating the marrow out of them. So that's clearly been going on that long. And in the recent times since the extermination of the megafauna, we haven't really had much time to evolve, because 12 to 14,000 years really is a blink of an eye when we're talking about the development of human beings from their pre-ancestors. So that's kind of my take on it. You got anything else to add?
Yeah, just a quick little note here. I know many people bring up the Hadza and other tribes, which are primarily carnivorous, legitimately carnivorous tribes. They hunt and all that. But they'll be like, oh, they eat all these tubers and they have honey and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, and they smoke cigarettes and they drink alcohol. It's like, yeah, I'm sorry. There's just no tribe left in our modern era that actually hunts or eats the way that our true ancestors did. Again, that 20,000 to 2 million year span of time. And that's just, it's not their fault or anything like that. It's that, for one, all of that we hunted and ate to extinction. And the other part is, reservations, they're segregated into a chunk of land and they have to deal with that. And, it's a sad situation. And they're kind of like a form of tourism now. And I think that's exploitative, and I don't really support that.
I've heard people make the argument, well, I've been out with the hunter-gatherer tribes, and typically when they go out hunting, they're not successful. They don't bring something home every time. And I'm like, Well, in modern times, yeah, when their territories are limited, they're not able to just get up and move because they can't go live in another country, or they restricted in the areas they can live in. They've been relocated many times, and there's just not as many animals as there used to be, right?
Exactly. And so I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think it's the, it's the best look at it that we have. But again, the isotope testing, the how our body's designed, all that stuff paints a more accurate picture than looking out, in the in the wild, and that's fun and that's great and that's something you want to do. I fully support it. It's kind of similar to an argument of, if we look out, it looks like the earth is flat, right? You have to kind of zoom out and take this longer range, longer look at things to get the true picture, i.e., either through time or through space, i.e., in the true geography of the world, right? We had to leave the earth, to eventually confirm, oh, okay, it's round-ish,
Yeah, and you could make the argument that we lived on a frozen tundra, and we just killed the mammoths to make homes out of, and we didn't actually eat them. You could make that argument, I suppose, but I'm thinking that's kind of unlikely, because what else are you going to eat on a frozen tundra?
Right. And there is the thing with the Eskimo and all of them, and all of those, and that's, again, a decent, a good, but again, they smoke cigarettes.
Yeah,
They
in
drink.
modern times, yeah, ever since the whaling ships started trading with them for food, they've been importing tobacco, and tobacco is a big part of their culture, and they tend to let their kids, they tend to like kind of want to spoil their kids, and they just thought, tobacco use was just, making them happy and being kind to them. And they, in the past, in the not too distant past, they still lived remarkably long considering their incredible tobacco consumption. And of course, rumor has it alcohol consumption is quite high, in the Inuit areas. So, anyways, the plague of modern times where everything's available, right?
Yeah, I mean, they got polar bears drinking Coca-Cola. See it on
Right.
the TV, right?
Yeah, if you're worried about the polar bear extinction, perhaps you should cut down on the Coke supply. I'm just saying. Anyways, we want to thank everybody for watching. Would like to hear your comments on how we evolved, and what your thoughts on persistent hunting. And maybe you got some great resource you want to share with everybody out there. But we appreciate you watching. Make sure you manhandle that like button, and
Throw a spear at it.
yeah, stay
Put a
subscribed. If you like discussions like this is the channel for you. We like to talk about meat-based diet, exercise, and feeling better. So till next time, eat some meat and feel better. And whatever you do, don't
to
fall
fall
down
down
that
the
carb
carb
hole.
hole.